And for about 3.5 months, while people were trying to figure out what was going on, there wasn't a whole lot there. So I would say it probably 80% drop in business. Well, it's kind of hard to say for sure because I was only 1.5 years into this business when COVID hit. So, I mean, literally everything that I was working on stopped. I mean, even after the 3 months, it certainly wasn't what it was before COVID. So, I mean, still recovering. So for me, through COVID, the biggest contributor in growing my business has been referrals. I'm finding more and more of the clients that I've been working with in the past 2 years are referring me to other people they know looking to build business. I would say 95% of my business comes directly from referrals.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're in for another excellent show of Doc Fix That. I'm Dr. Alan Lycka, your host, and we have Mitch Cammidge, my right-hand person to the show. Today, our guest is Shelley Tobin, who is with her company called Higher Growth Consulting. And we're going to delve into Shelley's world and find out more. So, Shelley, we talked a little bit the other day about the businesses you were in, and I understand you were in a business where you used to hire people before and bring in temps and all that sort of thing before you got into the company you are now. Is that right?
That's correct. I was in the employment agency world for about 18 years. Well, ultimately, over the past 20 some years, my goal has always been to help the small businesses understand their legal rights and responsibilities in having employees. And I didn't feel like I was getting there with my previous company, so I decided to shut it down and start consulting where I could actually have an effect with those small businesses. So the company is Higher Growth Consulting, and really working with employers on the recruitment hiring side of their business, but assist them through to other employment related issues that they may come up against.
Yeah, this is H&R, and H&R has got a lot to do with hiring and also the unpleasant side of a business, which is the firing part of the side. But it also has to do a lot with retaining staff in this day and age, because those are supposed to be and should have always been the golden nuggets that every company has, the personnel that they have. But someplace along the way, that has been forgotten in some companies.
It has. Retaining employees is so much easier to do than finding, hiring, and training new employees.
And along the way, another big thing happened, which you were very much, you saw, was this COVID pandemic, which changed the scope of how everything is in the business world.
It really did. For me personally, I'd been working in the online world for about 1.5 years before COVID hit. So it didn't change much for me, but it added more validity, I think, to people understanding that it is an okay way to do business in the online world with Zoom and video interviews and all of that. So, you get to see the changes and the acceptance of it. And it really has made it easier for me to work with. Some of my companies have subsidiaries and locations across North America. And so I'm doing some work all over the place.
Yeah, without having to leave your house, which is really nice, especially with you having a family and children and everything else. And you have all these other hats you have to wear in a given day to make all these people happy in your world.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, a little travel here and then wouldn't be too bad, but it certainly does make life a lot easier in dealing with those other family obligations that I have.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's an interesting times, but as you say, I love my Zoom and I hate my Zoom because Zoom has its own moments. I tell you that last couple of today's a good day so far, touch wood as I say that. But geez, there's some sort of upgrade that happened in the ethers of the last couple of weeks that has made it difficult to get on Zoom sometimes.
Technology, we can't live without it, but it certainly has its challenges.
For sure. Okay. Mitch, maybe you want to help fill in some of the gaps here with this sort of business.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Doc, with a title like Doc Fix That, we got to get to the meat and potatoes, which is really talking about Shelley and her business.
In this segment of the show, before we get to that, we want to figure out all the things about HR. So crossing T's, dotting I's. So what do you perceive to be H&R in this day and age?
Well, Shelley's the subject matter expert here, but HR, I'm sure we can agree. And Shelley, obviously you want your opinion on this, not just what I say aloud. The landscape shifted violently for a lot of businesses, and in many cases, a lot worse still, primarily brick and mortar. You can't take that away from trades companies, et cetera. But that moved so that even in that world, people had to hire, fire, screen, interview with people, issue orders, et cetera. And that caused a lot of disruption just among the business owners. That friction was felt by the employees or the near employees or the soon-to-be employees or the past employees as well. That's caused so much change to people throughout that period of time, et cetera, just in 3.5 short years. I'd love to hear what you noticed most of all about that, because that disruption's not done yet. It's certainly sped it up or accelerated it, and technology certainly intruded on it, but that's led to a brand new host of issues as well, right? People navigating where before I could, watch you. So, hey, Shelley, you're my employee. I can watch you at work now physically, but if you're not at work because you're working at home, I don't know if you're doing your job the right way, right?
Yeah. And then there was the shift of power for businesses to the workers in that there is the great resignation going on and quiet quitting going on. So that those two trends are pretty massive, and they're going on to this day and age as well.
So, in the last 3.5 years, businesses have had to adapt. Obviously, everyone had to adapt and change to make it through the COVID years, if we want to call it that. I'm starting to see a little more normalcy in the businesses that I'm dealing with. I'm going back to a more traditional in the office environment, but the challenge definitely is there. People now are used to being able to have that work from home option. And so how do you make that work? How does it, and it's different for every business. With regards to the great resignation and the quitting, quiet quitting was always there. It's not something new. It's been around for years and years. It's just got a new name, right? But your A performers get tired of watching the C performers get away with doing nothing. And they've always downgrading, saying, well, if they get away with that, why do I put in all the extra work, right? So, it's nothing that HR is dealing with in any business. And the great resignation, sure, options are out there. It is employees market right now with so many jobs available. I think the last stat I saw in Alberta was there were over 100,000 job vacancies in the last quarter. So that would have been the last quarter of 2022, over 100,000 job vacancies. And so that makes it difficult. But the biggest part of that and why we're seeing so many job vacancies is because people left the workforce during COVID to start their own businesses because they had to do something to get money in the door. And other people who were close to retiring just decided to retire early and took all that knowledge and experience with them. And now we've got companies out there that are looking for 5 to 10 years of experience, and there isn't anyone out there to fill that. So now we have to look at how do we bridge that gap, right? How do we get these people that aren't quite there faster without the people with the knowledge to help mentor and train them?
And Shelley, that's a fantastic point. And on that, Doc, just to finish coloring in at the edges, you're seeing an awful lot of that Skillshare environment starting to move into that kind of area as well, where even small business owners are starting to create adaption, saying, well, even though somebody has experience over there, can I take and translate it over here? And a good example that I've seen very recently is even inside of trades, where you'll see HVAC companies hiring electricians. Electricians want to make a trade change as well. They'll pay them a premium to come in because they always need electrical work for HVAC. And the competencies to go in are very, very similar. So the curve is much shorter for people to come in as an apprentice in HVAC. But if you're a journeyman electrician, you can handle all the really dangerous parts on that side anyway. And usually they can cycle up in about a year or two and be ridiculously competent. Now you have two ticketed tradespeople working on your staff as well. And you're seeing these skills moving complementary across industries, not just from job to job or similar business type.
I know, and the workplace changing things, and the that are doing the best in it are those that are adapting to it. They're the ones that see it, and they don't see it as a challenge, but they see it as an opportunity. They see it as something that, yes, they need to adapt, but look, there's all these other things we can do. This is the way they look at the box differently than they used to.
Completely.
How do you feel about that, Shelley?
I mean, I think in order to survive, I think I said it earlier, we had to adapt. There wasn't any way around it. If you couldn't have your physical doors open, you needed to figure out how else to sell it. We saw shop owners with their doors closed going to online merchandising and such over that time. Smaller businesses, not the big ones, they already had that. So yeah, I mean, we've definitely, the business we know it is not what it was 4 years ago. It's not even close.
Exactly. Well, we're getting close to the end of this segment. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Shelley Tobin, who has an HR company, and she's in consulting for it, and she helps business with their H&R needs. And we've got Mitch Cammidge with me talking a little bit too about the things in business. So after this commercial message, we're going to be back and we're going to look at some of the challenges Shelley has herself with her business to try and help her through these difficult times. Okay, we take a short commercial break now so we can help people along. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, Doc Fix That here, and we're talking with Shelley Tobin, HR specialist, Mitch Cammidge, my right-hand person, talking to Shelley about some of the challenges she has in the HR world right now. Now, we talked about some of these the other day, Shelley, but maybe you can start with your biggest challenge in this day and age.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I mean, honestly, I think it's the same for most business owners, but it's a consistent revenue stream, really. I mean, in HR, when you go through the ups and downs in the economy, the first thing to be cut is HR. You lose people, you lose HR positions. So for my business, the volatility of that market, that the economic situation really is, it's the biggest direct impact on my business year over year.
So during COVID, did you see your revenue grow, shrink, or stay the same?
It shrunk.
By what percentage?
Well, it's kind of hard to say sure because I was only a year and a half into this business when COVID hit. So, I mean, literally everything that I was working on stopped. And for about 3.5 months, while people were trying to figure out what was going on, there wasn't a whole lot there. So I would say it probably 80% drop in business.
So, and this disruption occurred to a lot of businesses as well, that this disruption occurred. And at the same time, that revenue stream has not completely made it back for a lot of companies yet. Are you feeling the same thing, Shelley?
Not personally, no. I would say about 6 months into COVID, there started to get a little bit more confidence with business owners and realization that they couldn't continue the way things were. So they were hiring again. My business is now probably, I'm going to say about 45% above where it would have been in just before the pandemic hit in revenues. So it's are hiring again, and that's important for me. That gives me the opportunity to work them, 7 or 8 just last week.
Cool.
So.
Cool. That's exciting. Those are really exciting times where
Mm-hmm.
doors are opening now. And
Yes.
that is an exciting time where revenue is going in the right direction, is going
Yep.
in the right way. Certainly having that time in COVID is still, a period of time of 3 months where things went off the rails. That still you had to make money there to pay the bills where you didn't have any.
Yeah. And I mean, even after the 3 months, it certainly wasn't what it was before COVID. So, I mean, still recovering, still getting through that, but I'm seeing so much more activity in the workplace. And of course, the employment market doesn't hurt that with so many jobs and so few people. People are looking, and business owners are looking at all alternatives in hiring and finding those people.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. Is this is an interesting one because, the pundits are saying there's a recession coming on, but it's going to be a recession far different than any other recession we've ever seen. It's not going to be a recession where there's going to be a lack of work, where there's a lot of jobs that are going, that people are going to get fired and stuff like that. Because what's going to happen if companies lay off? Those companies are going to go, those people are going to go to other companies almost instantly.
Yes, they will. And then if they're currently working, they have a really strong chance of finding employment somewhere else fairly quickly because businesses are crying for those skilled, qualified people.
Yeah. And it's interesting way that, there is, I think going to happen is there is going to be some slowdown in the economy as these higher interest rates are going on, and we're stopping the flow of money and so on by increasing interest rates. So money is not going to be as easily to borrow to facilitate this transition. And after a COVID time when money was tight, we're still having problems with that right now with cash flow and things like that.
Yeah, I would think that, businesses are still hurting and trying to figure out how to manage that cash flow. But at the same time, if they want to maintain their current staff and retain people, they need to make sure there's a quality of life there, work-life balance for those people. And so hiring is probably still the number one thing on their mind, because if they don't manage the workload properly with all of their employees, they're going to lose employees. And then that just makes it harder for everyone. So, in all of the studies and all of the stats that I've looked at, and a lot of them come out of the US, but we're not that different. And it really is showing that hiring, attracting, and retaining are the 3 biggest concerns in business owners' minds right now.
Exactly. Okay, Mitch, I'm going to turn it over to you a bit on this factor. So,
you got it. Shelley, of course, we've talked earlier, and I've been writing copious notes like I always do. You've come to expect that as well. Cash flow and revenue are always the number one issue that we tend to wade into. And we're talking about hiring right now. What's it like for you to find your next job right now? How did that shift coming post-COVID as well? Because we talk to people, we shoot multiple episodes on this. We talk to people almost every week, and we hear the big 3 all the time, right? If they've got to have staff, then their own staff are tough to find. Sales, finding more customers, or in your case, literally getting yourself hired by the next company that wants to get you to do that for them is tough. And the cash flow on that revenue side. What's it been like for you over the last 3 years, last 2 years, getting yourself hired for the next job?
So for me, through COVID, the biggest contributor in growing my business has been referrals. And so in order to do that, I'm pretty with my clients. A lot of them will want, fast results but not actually be quick to respond when we've got applicants in front of them. So it's just making sure that the expectations are set with them. And then when we hit those goals and we find those people, I'm finding more and more of the clients that I've been working with in the past 2 years are referring me to other people they know looking to build business. I would say 95% of my business comes directly from referrals.
That is a very nice number. I really like that number a lot, because that means your advertising costs are kept down. That means your whole budget is kept down. I've always said the best customer you have is the customer you always have. The second best customer is the one referred from somebody that your business has. So you already have the biggest sources of keeping going. You already are facilitating that in your business. That makes the business model just that much more easier from everybody else. Then the third thing you have to do is make sure your existing clients, the ones that you have, are kept in the loop, and you have to keep them happy, and you got to keep them referring, because they're going to give you your next meal and your next.
Yes. And that's it. It's like I said, setting expectations, following up. We're not going to find people. Pre-COVID, I could find individuals and have my client interviewing people within a week. We're now 4 to 6 weeks out before we actually find the right individuals for my client, the employers, to interview. So, it's reminding that we're not about doing this fast and getting the wrong person. We're about doing this right and getting the right person, and that will take time. And so making sure they understand that. And if they're not willing to do that, then they're probably not the client for me.
Well, and that managing their expectations to the point that you can achieve them, which again is a whole different issue in this whole situation, because that managing of expectations from your clients is an issue in business as well. Communication.
It's the number one tool.
Now, I'm going to applaud you much like Doc did for a moment. Referrals are one of the toughest engines to set up. Now, what's wonderful about referrals is that they are really quick to turn over when they're in place, but they're really slow to get established. In fact, it's often the one that businesses neglect most frequently because it's tough. It's really tough to get to. You need to be applauded for that. That is a huge boon, because in feast cycles, you'll have more referrals than you could shake a pointy stick at. You don't really have to worry about them. And in famine cycles, then your ability to be able to find a little bit of work next, or find somebody else that's doing it, is going to be there. But that also means that if that's the one place we're in, it is also subject to current market conditions that are outside of your control, meaning that if your clients are really busy, they're going to come back to you all the time and they're going to be happy. But if they're scrambling or they're banging their head against the walls, there's just not enough of them to work with, because we can only work with a finite enough pool. It can sometimes take businesses years. So we're, kind of getting to that spot right now where we're talking about some symptoms that get in the way. Cash flow and revenue are typically simple. Now, they're not easy to solve, but they're fairly simple to understand. If you can map what you're going to spend, and you figure out what you're going to need, and you treat it like a game, like a measurement exercise, or like scorekeeping. Every week you've got a brand new competition. For Shelley's world, this week I need this much, and next week I need this much, and the week after I need a little bit, and the week after I need an awful lot. And then, holy crap, here comes a week that becomes ridiculously expensive. Small things like taking revenue markers, what you're going to spend expense-wise, and stretching over a month or over a quarter, really helps to actually plan from a sales side too. That helps you to have conversations with your really good partners, your current customers and former customers, and see who they can refer to. But also for you to add some other essential elements too, right? We all have to have some form of fashion in the content or ads in the world that we're in these days. So a marker is, how much can I get to so that I can afford to spend for something like an ad?
Mitch, I'm going to stop you there so we can take a commercial break again.
Absolutely.
We'll come back after our commercial. So, ladies and gentlemen, We're talking with Shelley Tobin, an HR consulting specialist, and Mitch Cammidge on Doc Fix That. Stay with us, because on the next quarter, you're going to hear some more tips on you can help your business succeed. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Alan Lycka here with my friend Mitch Cammidge talking on Doc Fix That. And we're talking with Shelley Tobin today, an HR consulting specialist who is seeing some growth in her business. It's exciting times for her. She's seeing the things that have been her efforts for coming in. All that hard work she paid for in COVID are starting to come to fruition now. And she just told us some magic words that her biggest source of business is referrals from her existing clients. So, Shelley, I'm going to dig under that hood just a little bit. What's your magic sauce to get those referrals?
I really think it's just about treating them right. It's always about setting expectations. And if those deadlines or expectations change, communicating them. For the most part, my clients are happy as long as they know what's going on. And so I just provide regular updates to let them know where things are and where we're advertising right now and what kind of a response we're getting on that. It's like anything in life. If you're working with another business, especially in a service-based world, those updates are important. You understand where your money's going and what you're spending, what you're getting for that. So just communicating with them. It's the biggest thing.
There's one word that you didn't mention there, and I'll put it down in your mouth, and that's asking for it. And asking your clients at the beginning of your relationship and also at the end of your relationship as it's moving on, because if you ask, they likely will give you something. But if you don't say that right at the beginning, people forget it. Your business grows because of the referrals from others. And if they know that right at the start and mentioning it at the start, it's a big ask. But also saying it later in the relationship. If you do have I really enjoyed working with you. I really loved helping you. And if you have any friends or family or other business that might benefit from my services, please let them know, because I think I can help them too. And that big ask those are the three hardest letters in the business world, is to ask for things and to make it part of a regular routine in that asking cycle, because people forget and they think, oh, I've given you something very valuable. I've helped your business. But then they forget that they could do something equally important for their friends as well, that you did for them.
It's a really good point, and I'm not really good at that.
No, and that means building a structure in where it helps. Yeah. Just like you're so familiar with building structure, Shelley. That's what you do, is build structure. But that's how you can make your structure even better. So, I mean, if you're getting 95% of your business from it, can you picture how much that'll go up if you put that little thing in there? And my friend, Mark Victor Hansen, who is co-author for Chicken Soup for the Soul, and his wife, Crystal Hansen, wrote a book called Ask. And that book, I think, should be required reading for everybody, because asking is something we're so bad at. All of us are bad at. And yet, if you do that, it becomes something that really makes your business grow up. And I've talked to people on this show who've resisted that. They said, oh, we asked once. No, ask more than once, because really that's how it grows, because people forget. People absolutely forget. And if you put it in the beginning when you're starting, they've forgotten by the time you've done all the magic for them that you do. And so if you ask again, it just nudges them a little bit and brings their brain power a bit, and it just makes it happen that much more. So think about building that into a structure in the things that you do, Shelley, because I think you'll even find it even more beneficial for you as a suggestion.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Now, the second thing we talked about, which is going to be inevitable if you keep growing at the rate you are. And that's the growth factor. And that means bringing on more staff to help you do some of the things that you do in order to make this business even better for you. And, this is the hardest step, because a person as talented as you, Shelley, always have a bit of control issues. I mean, you have to have, because you know what you can do. You know what you do every day. And extending that to somebody else that's going to mess up, somebody that's going to have problems, somebody that's not going to do what you do in the way you do, is some of the scariest words in business out there. And you know what I'm talking about. Everybody in business, every one of your customers has that same problem. But unless they let go of the reins a little bit, they're never going to grow. It's like your children. If you do everything for them all the time, you'll never let them grow up. You got to let them fall down and skin their knees. You got to let them go and do the things that they do. Otherwise, they're not going to grow up to the wonderful children that they will be. You got to give them that power. That's the same thing with your business. I've always found being a business owner is a bit like being a parent, except you're parenting more people than you do in your business than you do in your household. And so you've got to allow that to happen. Otherwise, you won't grow to the extent that you need. So that's the next factor, is bringing on somebody in the areas that you would like to let go, the areas that you maybe have some deficiencies in, or maybe some areas that you don't like doing, or maybe some areas that you can freely give up, and maybe somebody can do it more, even better than you can. And so, and you know what they are. There's areas in your business that you absolutely detest, that you wake up in the morning and say, I don't want to do any more of this, or I don't want to do this, or this is something I'm absolutely not good at. And I've been doing it only because I've had to.
And this is a conversation I have with pretty much every one of my entrepreneurs that I work with. When we sit down and we try and figure out what the job description is for the person they want to hire, and I tell them exactly that. Make a list of the things that you don't want to do, that you postpone, that you procrastinate, that you just really don't like doing. And those are the things that we're going to craft into a job for you. And for me, I mean, I understand where I'm going with that. And being a solo entrepreneur, I'm not happy doing accounting. I really hate marketing and social media. So I've already farmed that stuff out. I've already gotten contractors to handle that for me. But as I grow, and if it continues in the fashion that it is in the last month and a half, that'll be sooner than I expected. But as I grow, I do have, kind of that list put aside of the things that I think I can give up. And then for me, it really just becomes about practicing what I preach. I talk to my clients all the time about making sure you have an onboarding plan, making sure that, the training is in place, that the check-ins are in place. And I work from home. So the person I hire will be working from home as well. I have no plans to open up a brick and mortar office of any sort. So, learning how to manage that, and that'll be different than it was before COVID. But for the most part, I have the basics already planned out for that, for when I need to actually do it.
Well, that's cool. And I'm glad about that. Now, the challenge is going to be, and I'll say it, is when you hire that person and they mess up on something. That becomes the first challenge, because then it becomes, I shouldn't have hired this person, or, there's something wrong with me because that person's messing up. And those are the challenges that most business owners start to get into. And I know you've seen that in some of the been happening, because
absolutely,
that's the first thing that goes out of their heads, is that, I was good at this, and then all of a sudden I'm letting the reins go, and this is what's happening.
And again, that really boils down to being prepared for bringing that person on. And, not a lot of people are there. They don't think about it. But I've had the experience and I've seen the results with clients who are prepared and who aren't. And so having your processes and your procedures laid out in a way and understanding for me, when I have a new employee or any employee and they make a mistake, I look at it as a learning opportunity for them. And as long as I have a good relationship and I'm communicating with the clients, then, it's a bit of a setback and maybe a little loss of confidence in that individual, but we can build that back up.
And that's what you got to do. And that's what you got to do. And, you got to give them some of the reins on a meted basis. You can't just let it all go, and you got to have the proper oversight, and you got to make sure that your expectations are in keeping with what they can do and the skill set that they do. And that's always the difficulty is meeting that all together.
The easiest way to make it so everyone understands the expectations is to have a very detailed and accurate job description.
Yeah, for sure. And also communicate it well, and also make sure you follow through with what you want to do. I find a lot of, I'm not talking to you, Shelley, that what happens is they say, yes, I want somebody on board, but I don't want them to do this, this, and this, and I don't want them to do that. So then things get muddled as to the clearness of exactly what that employee should be doing and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, for people who are just starting in business and it's their first employee, it's a lot harder. I've had so many employees over the years, and maybe not in the last 5 years, but in the last 15 years, that it's not as hard to let go of some of those things as long as you're prepared. And like you said, do it in stages. Here's the first things you're going to do in the next 30 days. And once you've got that down, then we're going to add on these things and so on. And it's the plan. It's having something in place that allows everyone to move forward at the expected rates.
For sure. Well, Mitch, come on in. Talk to us and give some of your words of wisdom, your golden pearls here.
Absolutely, Doc. Shelley, I've taken copious notes today, which is every one of our episodes of Doc Fix that's a little different, which one of us talks a little more. And I've had the privilege of being able to sit back and just listen to you share your expertise and to really show yourself off a little bit of as an entrepreneur. So first of all, you need to pat yourself on the back.
Jump in here and say, thank you for sharing with us as freely as you are. And thank you for bringing up our knowledge level as well, because it's showing that you're ready and willing to get to those levels and you're prepared.
Absolutely. So buckle up, get ready to jot a couple of notes. There's some stuff I want you to take away to consider. And of course, you and I are going to talk about this more, and we're going to bring you back in 6 months and say, how did everything work out? When we look at some of the most common issues that businesses have, and you just got symptoms of the same thing. That's everybody, right? All businesses have all things to people. Cash flow and revenue, depending on how you want to look at what's going on, whether it's our ability to measure the money, tells us how healthy or what's hurting the business, or that physically cash is just not available. Those are very common symptoms to have. So we can pat ourselves on the back and go, great, we're just like everybody else, and then we're going to fight like hell to get out of it. Same as when it comes to growth for our business, right? You've gone about investing in relationships with people first. These are things that are laudable, applaudable, areas that you want to sit there and be proud of that work that's gone there. But these ones alone allow us insights into creating simple paths forward that actually take away, as you know, dealing with people, capital on a day-to-day basis. Worst thing we do to ourselves is what happens inside of our head. So I'm going to give you some framing, some notes, some takeaways to consider using going forward. And one of them is a universal standard. This applies to everything, but I want you to consider it when it comes to revenue first, right? Revenue, there's always a what and a when. So what in the form of revenue or cash flow? What is the amount of money that I need? And when do I need it by? It's a really simple thing to consider. But if we take our constant cash flow issues and our constant cash flow constraints, and we line them all up in a row, a lot of it's not really a mystery. A lot of bills happen at the same time. Lease payments and mortgage payments and rent payments and utility payments and cell phone payments and car payments and insurance. And hey, I only pay my insurance one time a year. Well, exactly when it's there. If your insurance renews on April 25th, guess what's going to happen next year at April 24th? You're going to have to pay your insurance. It's pretty easy to figure out ahead of time that April 24th of next year, you're going to need at least a certain amount of money. Even if you can't figure out the total amount until, I don't know, March next year, you can take a good guess and put yourself in that place. So what and when it's to our cash flow measures are really important to be able to write down and look at it over a week and a month kind of period. The moment I could figure out what I need to make every week and when I'm going to need it by, that actually creates a set of measures and milestones. Now what we want to do for our brain is we want to trick it a little bit. We want to game it, all right? Now it creates a competitive environment. I'm not, oh crap, I'm backed into a corner and this is going to hurt like hell. No. This is how much I've got to chase. If I've got to do that, then I have to balance between serving my customers and finding new ones, or serving my customers and getting paid, or serving my customers and making sure that they invoice in enough time, etc. That creates another what and a when. I can measure how much what and when's got to come in a bucket before I can take that bucket and dump it out on the other side as well. So just creating that environment where it's a constant gamesmanship, where we're competing with ourselves and our own business weekly and monthly, allows us to also measure when we grow, because that's a part that's really tough inside of our head too. So when we consider money and cash flow, for instance, it's hard to see that, well, we already know, and I could see how proud you were, thankfully we're on video, talking about how much growth from pre-COVID to today, but right now your brain's probably still going, still not enough. I got to get a little more. How am I going to mitigate this? I'm going to measure it out. What's going to happen? When in reality, you should be going, well, this is going to take care of me and my business for 3 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks. And now I don't have the luxury of waiting that long. I've got the luxury of caring for them. And I can spend those 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks now moving forward.
Gotta stop you there again.
I'm right in the middle rant, Doc. What's going on?
I know, but guess what? We get to start that rant again after our commercial.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Doc Fix That, one of the newest shows designed to help your business. I have Mitch Cammidge, who's into our rant, me, Dr. Alan Lycka, and Shelley Tobin, an HR consulting specialist. And we're here to help her with her business today. Stay tuned. We'll be back after these words from our commercial. Ladies and gentlemen, we're into the last 15-minute segment of our show, Doc Fix That. Dr. Lycka here with Shelley Tobin, an HR consulting specialist. And from what I hear, she is doing really well, making things rock in the world out there. And also Mitch Cammidge, my friend, who is helping. Uh-huh. So Shelley, just to summarize, we talked about, first of all, your business. We talked about the challenges in your business. And the two challenges we decided to focus on are, number one, revenue. And Mitch is talking a little bit about that right now. And the second one is growth, which we addressed a bit there, and how that's happening in your business and how you're going to make it happen. And you're the one that set out a decent plan for yourself and help to, and you'll make it happen over the next while. It's a magic world out there that you get people to say what they're supposed to do, and then they're more likely to follow it rather than anything else. You know that yourself in your business, that if you don't get them to map it out and then make some verbal confirmation to it, then they don't follow it, then they don't do it, and did I agree to that? The answer, yeah, we've got it on tape. We've got it there. This is what you're doing there. So Mitch, you were on a rant there. So let's summarize that rant for Shelley so that she can take that home a little bit more. And in this time, we'll wrap this up in a nice, tidy little bowl and let her take it home with her.
You got it, Doc. All right, Shell, I gave you a couple of watchwords here to start with, all centered around revenue. So I'll restate them again. How much and game it. Put an exclamation mark on it. So what is the measurement and milestones? What do I need? What do I need bills to pay? What do I need for revenue? What do I need from that goal and that measurement side of things? And then a sense of when. When creates the impetus and the urgency of time. The moment I can say, I need this by here, but I only need this over here, we tend to think of it in a big pile and we have some nebulous framework that we wrap our heads around, but we don't actually address it empirically. I need this here. And that tells me that this week or the next 10 days or the next 2 weeks or the next month or the next 3 months, I have to go towards here. And then there's no surprises if, in mythical land before the commercial break, where I was talking about if your insurance only shows up April 25th of every year, it's not a surprise April 24th you have to pay the insurance. And it shouldn't be a surprise to you in business on March 25th that in a month I better have, however much the insurance was last year plus however much more they're going to charge me, right? So that essence we miss in business a lot is actually that gaming there. It creates a competitive environment in our head instead of something really fear-based. It doesn't allow us to hijack it by thinking, here's the next goal I'm pursuing next. We've all been competitive at some point, whether we've played Monopoly or in business or in sports or art, etc. We've all been competitive either with ourselves or perhaps we've actually competed at some point in the form of contests, etc.
So Mitch, we're going to get Shelley now to tell us what are some of her big takeaways from the show today.
Wow, that's but really, I mean, in conversations we've had, the revenue, I mean, it's up and down. I think I really need to work more on getting consistent with the follow-up so that I can have more of the rolling hills instead of the mountain peaks and valleys in order to make sure that it's covered.
That's how you do it, is you build it into a system and make the system happen. Because you know where your revenue is coming from. You know where your customers are coming from. You know where it's happening. But I think the difficulty following through to the systems that you need to build, developing the systems, stick to them, because the systems are what will carry you through those peaks and valleys more than anything else. It's not like you have to go and develop a whole advertising campaign to drag new people into your doors. It's you've got blocks right there. You just have to mechanize the system to the point that it works very well. And if you can't, you can do that a couple of ways. So one is, have questionnaires that you ask your people. How did you like my business and so on? And when they answer them, then the answer is, well, if you liked what I did for you and you like the things, then there's a good point to do an ask. It's a real beautiful point to do an ask because they've already told you they love you. Now's the point it's a good ask. It's like your child saying, can I have the keys to the car after they buttered you up and everything else that way. So there's a good with the ask and things like that. The revenue, again, that comes from projecting and knowing how a customer is worth to you. And therefore, by putting those together, you can figure out what your revenue growth is by knowing what your keys, what each customer is worth. And that becomes little building blocks along the way in putting down and making those happen. So little things that I think help cross the T's and dot the I's, little things that'll help make that grow. Question I always like to ask, and you may not be able to answer this one, where would you like to be in 5 years?
Wow. In 5 years, I would like to see this business growing to the point where maybe I have 2 or 3 employees. Ultimately, my goal, if I look even further down the line in 10 years, is I'm working on a beach somewhere. So we'll see.
So then you can,
I got to jump in, Doc. I got to jump in on that one. So Shelley, I want you to back that up. And even though I focused an awful lot on revenue today, I want you to think about, what, when, how much game it in relation to doing that. That allows you to give yourself something to measure towards. It's not just a money thing. If I have X amount of money, I can get here. What does it take to give yourself a what and a when and a how much, and then create the game path forward? Consider the same language when you look at that repeated business, those referrals, etc. When we can figure out exactly what we want to say and what that message is and how frequently we're going to deliver it and how often, we actually put the environment in place to measure, to Doc's point, to build that system.
Right.
And if you take, I can see myself in 5 years or 10 years Well, the moment you can take that and measure it out over the next 2 years or 3 years, it doesn't make working from a beach all that daunting when you decide that it's going to create the measurable for revenue and employees and everything else too. Doc, I had to jump in.
Yeah, and that's why I like to those things.
Mm-hmm.
See, dreams are goals with a deadline. Okay. If you remember that, Mitch is making you come up with the deadlines. He's making you come up with the substantives for those dreams. So I pushed you your dreams, which are always hesitant because you're always afraid somebody to say, "Oh, you're crazy. Oh, you're nuts." Working from a beach somewhere? Come on. The answer is all these things are doable. You just have to put some deadlines on it and some substantives on it so that they become a reality. And, suppose we are going into a recession. Well, I've seen more businesses make their profits in a recession than any other time because everybody falls out of competition. Everybody falls out of the way. And those with a firm belief and a firm dream and a firm pipeline just make it happen. The rest of them just fall off.
Doc, to that point, in COVID, in our current recession right now, in the oil and gas shutdown 2014, 2015, approximately 7 to 9% of businesses globally experienced growth. And not all of those were the biggest players. That was a mix of small, medium, large, and enterprise class companies. They're the ones that created some innovation, that stayed aggressive, didn't turtle and fold under, et cetera, and that were really specific on their measurables, how to do that. And when businesses will retract, oil and gas is a great example. Businesses in the first 12 months, the oil and gas shutdown, retracted by about 67%. Well, in that same 12-month period, about 7% of companies grew by 71%. The trade-off between those is staggering, and you're talking businesses the same place. So if we're in a challenged market right now, buckle up, because you can take your dreams working from a beach and navigate that forward in a screwed up economy. This is the time for growth to happen, because a lot of your competitors, they're probably hiding. They think they're waiting in the weeds for everything to get better. Well, this is your time to really get out of it, Shell.
Yeah. So we're at the end of our show here, Shelley, and I'm just going to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And thank you so much for being a participant. I hope you found this a worthwhile exercise. And then now it's going to mean putting the pedal to the metal and taking some of these things and making it to the next level.
Thanks for having me and for the invite. And I'm ready to do the work.
Okay. So, Mitch, we will take a short break and come back at the hour. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. And thank you for this. Mitch, thank you for your insight. And we will be back for the next show of Doc Fix That in short order.